With all the injuries, blanks, and double game weeks we've got coming up, you might be tempted to hit the wildcard button in game week 22. If so, I've got a draft for you. Starting off then with the goalkeepers and defenders, and I've gone for Areola and Dubravka as a nice goalkeeper rotation. When you look at their fixtures over the next 3 game weeks, I think the two of them rotate really nicely. Areola has Bournemouth in game week 22, then Man United in Arsenal, and then Dubravka, he's got Villa. You'd probably want to bench him for that, and then he's got Luton and Forest afterwards, where you could quite happily start him. I don't think there's an outstanding goalkeeper in FPL at the moment. I don't think one has emerged really this season, so for that reason, I don't think it's worth spending all the money on a goalkeeper. You may as well go for the 2 cheapest options and rotate them, in my opinion. I've gone for Udogie over Pedro Porro. I know Pedro Porro's stats are slightly better than Udogie, but given that there's now, over $1 million between the price of the 2 players, I think you could pick Udogie and then just save yourself $1 million, to be honest. They're both as nailed to play as each other, and yes, Pedro Porro might be slightly better going forwards, but Udogie's been taking up some really nice positions. And I think come the end of the season, their total attacking returns compared to one another, I don't feel they're going to be too different. Just my opinion. If you want to go for Porro, then most certainly go for it. I just think it's worth saving the cash on Udogie. And if you want to build this team, you're probably going to need to save that cash. Estupinian, I think it makes sense to go for him. I mean, the bench can cover when he's got difficult fixtures, and I think he's a really good option for the next couple of game weeks. Brighton have finally proven they can actually keep Premier League clean sheets, and he's a nice attacking option in the Brighton defence. I've gone for Trent in this team. I'll talk about him in a second, but Pep Lijnders, the Liverpool assistant manager, has confirmed that he's likely to be back fit for the weekend, which means he should be playing against Chelsea in game week 22. A bit more info then on Trent, particularly with Salah out and a likely double game week in 25. I really think it makes sense to go for this guy. I don't really think of him as a defender in FPL. I know he's priced $8.5 million, which is expensive for that position, but I really think of him as a player that can get returns through 3 different means: goals, assists, and clean sheets. And if you top them all up this season, from 17 starts, he's got 13 returns, right? And if you pick, say, a midfielder or a striker that had those numbers, you'd be pretty happy with them. So I think you should apply that same logic to Trent. Liverpool have definitely improved defensively this season as well, no doubt about it. I think they're still the Premier League team that have conceded the fewest goals this season, and they've kept a good amount of clean sheets too. So with Robertson back as well, I really like Liverpool defence going forward, and of course with a double in 25. Yes, you could argue a couple of the fixtures coming up are tough, Chelsea and Arsenal. I've got to say, I wouldn't rule out a Liverpool clean sheet against Chelsea. I think they'll probably struggle to keep a clean sheet against Arsenal, but we all know Trent can get attacking returns in the big games, so I really like him as an option. And if you're on your wild card, I think it makes sense to go with him. On to the midfield then, and you can probably see I'm going for a 3-4-3 with this team. I've got Richarlison, Foden, Palmer, and Diogo Jota as my 4 midfielders. Richarlison, I think, is in really good form for Spurs at the moment. I think he's going to be taking their penalties with no Son, and he's in great form. For $7 million, I think he's fantastic value. Foden, Palmer, and Diogo Jota as my next 3. Foden, I think, is my favourite of the Man City midfielders. I know Kevin De Bruyne probably has a bigger upside, but I don't think Pep is going to be... Well, I think Pep is going to be really cautious with Kevin De Bruyne, basically, and really limit his minutes. For that reason, I think I'll probably go for Foden, just because I think he's probably going to start more games. Cole Palmer, I genuinely think is probably the best player in the game at the moment, really, considering his price. Absolutely fantastic. Great from open play and, of course, on penalties for Chelsea as well. Diogo Jota has been absolutely lethal in his recent games for Liverpool. Without Mo Salah, I don't see any reason why Klopp would play anyone else in that right wing spot for Liverpool while Diogo Jota's on form. He's good with his left foot, he's good with his right foot, he's good with his head. I think there's a question mark really on who will take the penalties for Liverpool without Salah in the team as well. Could it go to Darwin? Could it go to Jota? I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you know the backup Liverpool penalty taker, because I'm not too sure anyone does. I really like Diogo Jota as an option. Obviously had a fantastic game week in 21. And if you're on your wild card, I reckon you should go with him. And finally, closing off the draft then, I've gone for Tony, Haaland and Solanke up front. You can see Garnacho is the other player that I've gone for on my bench. Tony, I think comparing him to other strikers in FPL at the moment, particularly Watkins, For me, I think he just edges it. Yes, Watkins might be playing for a better team and might get more open play returns, but Watkins doesn't take set pieces and he's not on penalties. Tony is, so I really like that factor about him. I really like players that take penalties. You can see most of this team are their team's penalty takers, basically. I just really like that upside. And the fact he's now, well, definitely on free kicks. Obviously scored one in game week 21, so without Mbeumo, I think he's going to be taking them. I just think there's so many more strings to his bow than Watkins has. And he's got a double game week confirmed in 25. One of the games will be against Man City, but he proved last year, well, he's got that in 23 as well, but he proved last year he scored a couple goals at the Etihad. So the guy's, yeah, really good in the big games, and I think he'll do fantastically well for the rest of the season. I think if you're on your wild card, you might as well go for Haaland, particularly if you've got a strong bench. I do think he's going to be back for game week 22. He's obviously been pictured in training. That was, yeah, a week to go when he was pictured until the game in game week 22. So return to training. He's got a week until his next game. You know, I think the stars are aligning for him to start against Burnley, basically. Draft Time don't currently have him with an expected points figure because they're not predicting him to start. But I think my personal opinion is slightly different. I think he will play. And I've gone for Solanke as my third striker. I think this is the area where you could potentially make a bit of a change to your team. I know Solanke hasn't scored in recent game weeks, but for me personally, he's looked just as good as he has in other games. It's just the opposition and the rest of the Bournemouth team haven't quite been playing as well, but he's been looking equally dangerous in even the tough games that he's had recently. You could go for 5 midfielders if you fancy a midfielder instead of either Solanke or Tony, but I think the game's shaping up at the moment that the best team is a 3-4-3. Yeah, the bench I think is really nice. Obviously, as I said, a rotation between the two goalkeepers. Doty's there. I reckon he can come in game week 25 if his double is confirmed. I think he's probably the best of the defenders at this price tag. Not because he's going to keep clean sheets, but because he's exceptional going forwards. Garnacho, I mean, he's starting every game for Man United. 4.8 million. Decent going forward. I think he's a good option. And then Gusto, he's probably the best of the cheap defenders, although question marks as to whether he's going to be fit for game week 22. I mean, if you're on your wild card, you can probably take the risk, but we all know there are plenty of other options at this price tag, right? Branthwaite is probably the best replacement if you don't fancy Gusto. But yeah, that's the team. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. All right, and that's the end of the video. I thought it'd be useful just to put together a wildcard draft. I think whether you're on your wildcard or not this week, it's still useful to hopefully see what my opinion is on the best team in the game at the moment. If you enjoyed the video and found it useful, please leave me a like rating. As I said, let me know in the comments what you think of this team and if there's anything you change about it. And subscribe if you want to see more content from me just there. And I will catch you in my next video.